This is what happens when the science of building buildings is ignored. This is a very famous architecture situation that happened in Rio de Janeiro some number of years ago in a building, a condo building called the Palace. Now the challenge is that the engineers and construction crew had decided to use beach sand in the concrete mix. Now if you don't know, beach sand, as you can imagine, has salt in it, and it corrodes steel. This was a fatal flaw. Now, to be fair, most people got out alive. They saw the problem soon enough. Some people had died in going back in. This is a mess. Now, what's interesting about architects and engineers, as many of you would certainly know and understand, is that they are educated, re-educated, certified, and there are standards by which they operate. In fact, 90% of architects have a degree in architecture. I have to imagine 100% of engineers have a degree in engineering. I asked ChatGPT the other day, give me a list of professions that you're required to have a degree for the profession that you're in. It made a list, as it does so well. There were 71 professions. Marketing wasn't one of them. There is no or limited requirement for us in the profession that we have. And I'd like to suggest that it shows up in some of how we're respected in the organizations in which we operate. In fact, sadly to say, this is a list of some of the board members or the board member companies of MMA Global, of which I run out of the US. Only 25% of these people have a degree in marketing. Some of the world's biggest, best marketers, dare I suggest that, at least with some of the largest budgets in the world, do not have a degree or advanced education in marketing. To be fair, I don't either. In fact, I said to a board member not too long ago, I said, listen, marketing appears to be a kind of collection of anecdotes that are rolled up in strategies told by very good storytellers. That's the thing that we do really well. She laughed and said, feels like it. Right? They agreed. We know that we have challenges in who we are and the role in which we show up in the companies that we perform. It's not a secret. It's not like it's hidden in some way. I asked a marketing professor team of professors, but I asked one professor the other day about what was happening in marketing. Like, what's the status of marketing? Like, why kind of aren't we respected as a profession? And a marketing professor pointed out to me, we have no codified body of knowledge upon which we all agree. There is no established science that sets a standard for how we operate and what we do. In fact, the only thing that I know about is a book from the Marketing Science Institute, which is a collection of academics in the US, that identifies empirical generalizations of marketing. Now, there are 125 empirical generalizations in the book. They are backed up by 10,000 research studies. So I get it. I'm from out of town. I'm from someplace else. I'm here, so I don't want to put you too much on the spot. How many of you have read the book? How many of you even knew it existed? I didn't until just 4 or 5 years ago. We are working to update this book, by the way. We need to understand the underlying science of how our business operates. I said to a friend of mine in a board meeting the other day, actually I think put it most succinctly. You ready for this? This might be hard to hear. He pointed out to the rest of the board members that the discipline of marketing is largely undisciplined. It is. We don't operate with a set of standards and a set of common knowledge of a real belief in the science of how this business works, and yet it informs and educates and impacts all that we do. So my assertion today, my whole point of coming here, and what the MMA is all about, is to encourage you to embrace the science of marketing. And so over the next few minutes, I'm going to express to you why that's important. why there's missed opportunities from that. I'll explain one really big one that I experienced firsthand. I'm going to talk to you about some of the science the MMA has and how you can begin to apply that. I love Navi's presentation here today, but I'm going to give you a real, tangible, creating more value out of marketing by just doing things a little bit differently, which is what I'd like you to be open to. And then I'm going to try to give some steps on why this matters and how you can harness it. Okay? So 25 years ago, I was asked to step in and turn around the IAB. Do you have an interactive advertising bureau here? Does the association exist? Okay. So in the US in 2001, just as we came off of what was the dot-com bust, I was asked to step in and turn around the IAB and in essence turn around online advertising, which might be for some of you who are too young to remember that this happened, but there was a time that marketers wanted nothing to do with online advertising. They hated it. They thought it was stupid. It was derided in the press. Everybody thought we were idiots. I was a dot-com guy. I was in San Francisco at the time trying to initiate that business. But in my process of running the IAB, in fact, I'll give you one example. My first press release that I put out as the head of the IAB, I was proud to announce that online advertising had gone down only 27%. We were excited about that. Like, that was good news that the marketplace wasn't as bad as we thought it could be because we saw an entire digital ecosystem slipping away from us due to perception in the marketplace about the value of online. Now, I realized very clearly at that time that I had to prove that online marketing and online advertising worked. I had to have a system, a process, and ability, scientific knowledge that could help marketers go, oh, I see how this fits. This is what it matters to me. Because clearly at only 3% is spent. I mean, what are you at now here in India? 50%, give or take a little bit? 50, 60% is digital. So it's hard to believe that that's where it was, but that's where it was. And it was nasty. I mean, people were hostile to us digital marketing guys at the time, right? Now, the challenge that we had is that the prevailing measurement system to understand a new channel's role in a marketing mix was a thing called media mix modeling. I'm hoping a number of you understand that as a measurement technique that has existed for many big companies for a lot of decades. Okay? The problem with media mix modeling is that it doesn't measure small and it doesn't measure new. So when things, like Navi talked about, when new things come along, when the world changes, the context has changed dramatically for marketing, then what do? If you can't measure that into the future, because media mix model looks back so far, what do? So what happened is that I got introduced to a gentleman named Rex Briggs out of America. Now, Rex is probably the marketing world's greatest measurement inventor. There's very little question. He's incredibly brilliant. He worked directly for Sir Martin Sorrell when he was 24 years old. He's that smart. And Rex was working actually on the time when I came into the IB and trying to figure out how to understand the role of online digital in the context of a broader marketing mix. He was building a methodology that we now call multi-touch attribution. Now, Rex showed this to me. I understood it, immediately got it, knew it. I have a measurement background right away. And he and I set off to do 24 studies over the next 5 years with major marketers to validate the value of online marketing, to suggest what was its optimized role in a mix, because there will always be an optimized level in a mix, always. That's just the nature of the beast. It's the way the world works. Okay. Now, it proved pretty quickly. We did a study with McDonald's, we did Unilever, we did Toyota, a number of other big brands, mostly in the US, to be fair. And we validated that online should be at least double digit. We basically proved with an intense level of science, and if any of you have tried to do multi-touch attribution, it's really hard. I have executed probably 4 or 5 dozen studies in a public sphere around that methodology. It's incredibly complicated and difficult to do, still remains so. That said, we were actually able to prove that it should be in the double-digit range and that there was real opportunity to marketers to do it that was producing better results, better brand, better performance of marketing. We were measuring all that. We basically proved with intense science and knowledge, which, to be fair to you, and my background is this, I was trained as an economist, what economic science, which I told you was absolutely obvious, which was high supply of inventory, middling demand by marketers. It's going to be the deal of the century. That was obvious. Now, are you going to bet your business and your whole marketing budget and the future of your brand on that intuition, that knowledge? I don't know that you would. That's why we did MTA. But it should have proved, and I don't find enough marketers who even understand the basics of economic science and how the world works, supply and demand being the simplest of those concepts. So it was interesting at the time, we started to validate this, and marketers started to get a clue, but then the whole world shifted in 2004. Bill Ford, the icon of Ford Motor Company, was in the process of relaunching the F-150 in America. It's a large truck. It is the most popular model of all automotives in America, is this truck, the F-150. And what was interesting in that is that there was a huge amount of pressure on them. In fact, Bill Ford came out and said it was the most important launch that Ford had done in their entire history, was reintroducing, it was a relaunch actually, this truck. And they set up and worked with us to employ multi-touch attribution, MTA, in order to understand internet's role in the marketing mix. Here's what we found. That study proved in an A/B test split that when consumers who were exposed to the internet at 25%, they sold another $2.5 billion in trucks. $2.5 billion just by getting the mix right. Just by, at this point, optimized at 25%. And trust me, 25% was revolutionary to marketers. That was idiotic to even suggest that was that high. In fact, you want to know a little secret? I've not told this publicly before. When Ford saw the results and we said, guys, you're talking about a 10% increase, in sales in this group, like we proved it. We knew exactly what media this group was exposed to. We knew that they'd seen 25% was internet, and we knew exactly who bought trucks. We pulled 600,000 records of who bought vehicles that year and tracked back to the individual media hubs. I mean, this is it's a $1 million research project. Incredibly complicated. So we knew exactly what had happened. We told Ford they said, and by the way, we've not lied about any one of these studies. I've always just told the truth about this stuff no matter what happens. In fact, we had one study that went bad. It just was Phillips. It didn't work. It's a longer story. Internet didn't matter. We told that story. This is the only time we lied. Ford says, would you do us a favor? Would you just tell them it was like a 4% increase in sales? We don't want anybody else to know. Isn't that funny? The only time we lied. We said, you know what? We thank what you did. We'll give you that one. That's okay. This is obvious. What's funny about that time is that there was no measurement science to measure new or exciting like digital. Now, we all know digital now. We now know how powerful it is. Most of you are probably digital-only marketers. I would suggest that didn't exist some number of years ago. That's what needed to happen differently. Now, the thing, though, that's disappointing to me about this, and I'm going to take a side jaunt here, MMA spends a lot of time in supporting marketers to adopt MTA. We still believe it's a measurement system of the future. We still believe it has to do it. However, in at least the US, only 52% of marketers are using MTA today. That's nuts. That's crazy. How can we be that way? And I talk to marketers who use MMM, and it's disrespected. They say, we have it, we don't want to give up the budget, we just do it every year, but we don't use it. It's nuts. It's just nuts. So even after all these years, we still not completely learned, even based on that Ford example, that lit up digital marketing to become the business that it is today. In fact, it kind of reminds me, I had a boss. I worked at Y&R, Young and Rubicam. If any of you are old enough to remember when the agencies had names like that, they've now all changed, obviously. But I worked at Y&R, and I had a boss that used to yell at me and my team who would come out of client meetings, right? So I was the agency, I worked on AT&T Business and a bunch of other businesses at the time, Apple and a few others. And we'd come out of meetings and he'd say, just give the client a quick answer. Like he'd yell at us like he was mad. Because I would, you can tell, this is my style, what I'm saying here today. I would go, that's an interesting question. Let us think about that and get back to you. He didn't want us to do that. I guess his whole thesis was some variation that would make the client sort of feel more comfortable if I just gave a quick, immediate answer. We used to call it internally the be wrong but be strong strategy of client service support. I still see way too much of that going on today. Okay? So here's the thing, okay? MMA is on a pursuit of truth. We're out to understand as much of the science of marketing as we can and to really change it. Let me give you a couple of examples, just two of them I'm going to do. One of them I'm more extended. We have discovered an autopoietic approach with unsupervised machine learning via one-hot encoding and K-most clustering. Anybody understand that here? Yeah. That's the new language, people. You need to know this. For personalization of ads. Now, listen, autopoietic is basically what is biology. It's the concept of always evolving, always learning is really what that's. It's a thematic. It can be applied here, and it's really the essence of what unsupervised machine learning would be, that the AI is learning from itself. Here's interesting. We've done 22 results on this. Consortium AI personalization, Monica mentioned it earlier. We have done 22 studies. We've seen gains of plus 149%. Some of them on sales. In fact, the one that we just did, we've not announced, plus 200, I'll tell you, it's AT&T, plus 270% against sales, just by personalizing ads using machine learning. But if we don't know this, how are we going to execute it? The other one is that we have some neuroscience work that we've done in a concept called inattentional blindness. We have some studies from a gentleman named Simons and Chalbres at Harvard that was done in 1999. This is pretty famous. It's called the selection attention test, okay? But we used it for targeting, neuroscience for targeting. Listen, I don't want to be disrespectful of the previous speakers here, but I heard some stuff. It's not right what was said. That's not right. That is not how targeting works today. There is a better approach, and it's inherent in this approach. It's looking inside the mind of the consumer using statistical techniques to do that. In fact, very pointedly, what we find is that when we do that, we plus 50% to plus double campaign results, and it's using economic science, marginal utility, and the statistical techniques called beta distribution and logent function. This is the new world of marketing. We need to understand that. In fact, I'm going to give you an example of this. Watch this video. Can we play it? Here, let me see. Can you play the video there, guys? So I want you to watch this carefully. Now, you got to count the people in white T-shirts. You got to count the number of times they pass the basketball. I'm going to ask you another question here, okay? So carefully, watch the white basketball players. Got to pay attention to them. Count how many times you see that. How many times you see them pass the basketball. It's really important. Really important. Keep watching. Count, count, count. Okay, pause it. Pause it. Yeah, please. Yeah. Okay. Who cares how many times the basketball was passed? What happened in that film? Anybody know? What happened? You know the video? Seen it? How many of you seen that video before? Okay, good. How many of you, so maybe keep your hands up, how many of you saw the gorilla the first time when you saw it? I didn't. Here's the issue. The brain makes decisions. It doesn't give a damn about what your propensity is to consider a brand. It doesn't care about your purpose-filled ad that directs the consumers to love your brand. Their brain said, that's stupid, it's out of my mind, I don't even pay attention. They don't even see it. If you have no interest in the brand, the brain makes a decision. It's neuroscience. We all walk around like we think we can tell consumers what they're going to believe, and it's just not going to happen. Too many times you are, whoops, I can't see it. Go back one, sorry. This is your brand. You are the gorilla. You're not even seen. The brain makes a decision in 3/10 of a second to tune you out. That's what happens. It's just gone. It's just gone. It doesn't matter. It didn't register. It doesn't create any brand favorability. Now, this is a much more complicated concept, and I'm not going to try to take the time to go into it today, but it's basically a concept called movable metals growth framework. Again, Monica mentioned it earlier today, and it says that those who have a propensity to consider your brand and the rest of the people won't. The problem is there's a huge group of people that will not buy your brand no matter what you do, no matter what ad you run. It isn't going to happen. It isn't going to happen. I don't care how good your purpose-filled ad is. I don't care. It doesn't work. The brain made a decision for any consciousness to get rid of it. Now, here's where it gets interesting. By the way, we happen to know movable metals beats every other targeting segmentation, including the ones you heard on stage today that are flawed. This is better, and it's brand new. Here's where it gets interesting. Those who would consider the movable metals concept, the return on revenue, 5x ROAS. Brand loyals ignore that. It's a very small group. You don't need advertising. Those unresponsives, that's where the money goes. This is why I think CMOs get fired today. Because we run a campaign, we produce great creative, and then we find out it didn't work because it didn't produce results because we pushed to the wrong people whose brain said, I don't care. But we don't know this in marketing. My board doesn't know this. I mean, they're learning now because we've been working on this for the last 3-4 years, but that's the idea. So listen, here's the point, gang. There's a lot of science out there. There's a lot of science. And a lot of you are probably considered to be data field marketers, right? That's probably where you're at. I would consider myself to be a data-oriented marketer, okay? And data's great, right? I mean, this study done by professors at Stanford, Wharton, University of Pennsylvania, and MIT is one of the most cited papers out there. It proves that data-driven companies, therefore marketers, will produce increased results, plus 4 or 6%. Like the statistic, it's a very legitimate research. But I'm not suggesting data. I'm not even suggesting data-driven decisions. In fact, I might suggest data decisions aren't off. What I'm proposing today is that we need to get to science, and that becomes our X factor. In fact, let me turn off the slides for a moment. Here's the deal. So there's a lot of complexity in marketing today. There's no question about that, right? It's gotten really hard. I get it. I mean, I don't know, what's the value of TikTok versus Meta versus Google? I mean, Snap. I mean, I'm not even sure all the platforms you have here, but it's really hard. There's just no question about that. And certainly, you all feel the pressure to prove our value, right? You're doing that every day. If you're an agency person to your client, if you're just talking within the C-suite, if you're a CMO, to the rest of the C-suite to get validity. The most common thing I hear in the U.S. is marketers or CMOs who tell me that everybody in the marketing C-suite thinks they can do marketing like a side hustle. They're all so good at it because we've not proved to ourselves what it is. And yet the issue is that without a foundation of science, it's going to be really tough for us, right? So you saw today what happens when foundations are weak. That's the building example. It's a metaphor for what I think we're against. And I think that the demand for accountability is not going to change whatsoever. And here's the issue, and I want to be really clear because this is my whole point today. It's not about data. Data helps us build experience, but science builds knowledge. Data works in context at the time, but data will be wrong in the next context because the situation has changed. But with science and the rigorous science, then you understand how to develop hypotheses and research rigor in order to change things. So I'm going to say it again. We are accumulating experience by being data focused, but we are not necessarily building knowledge. That's it. And imagine like this. You walk into the board meeting, and you're able to say to the board, not here's the campaign that we're running, but basically what you're doing is you're talking about a level of validated proof of marketing's direct contribution to revenue, margin, and enterprise value. That's where we've got to go. That's what we need to do. We need to speak the business language, not the marketing language. And you need to imagine having a team that has the scientific precision that they leverage these validated models and personalized experiences, optimizing every Ruby spent. That's the idea. Think about how we then look within our companies and the contribution we have to the board and to others. That's the issue. We've got to get to science. And can I be fair? There can't be any country better than India to figure that out, right? Aren't you going to be the best at that? I mean, America's still a little liberal arts. We still think there's other stuff going on. We have communication degrees. I don't even know what that is. But you have real engineers. You have a science-based economy. You have an oral orientation to it. Like you could excel here like nobody else could. So that's it, gang. I'm suggesting that we create an experimental mindset that separates cause from correlation. That's the idea. And with that knowledge, we are marketers that are treated with the same respect as finance or engineers or others in the company who have the background, who have the standards and the work that they do, right? Here's what I know too. Final thought. That of the stuff the MMA has, of the science that we have figured out, and Rohit and Monica and the rest of the team have been involved with this for the last 7-8 years, and we've been on this path in pursuit of science and understanding, that we can move the stock price, the market valuation of a company, we see plus 10% just by implementing some of what we suggest. That's a radical new change. That's a whole different position when we can really prove it. So my implore to you today is to work with us to do that, to help perfect it. Are we perfect yet? No way. No. We still have a lot of learning. And it may change. We might be wrong in some cases. That's fine. We've just got to get the right.
It's not going to be easy. Could be really possible, though. This is the thing, as I saw with the Ford case study, marketing really does matter a lot when you get it right. We got a little lucky in getting that one right. Now the job is to make sure that we're right all the time. Have a great event, everybody. Thanks for letting me be here. Thanks.